What's going on, guys? Welcome back to Love the Game. We've finished our Euro series, but there's still one thing left to do. I've got my England shirt on. I know we lost, but it was one of those games. It was an interesting game. What did you guys feel? I think when we ended the last video, we did say one thing was if it went into penalties, it's Italy's game. And yeah, Ani, I think both of you, I need to apologize to both of you guys, calling you guys fence sitters and whatever. I will take it all back. Guys, make sure you watch our last video. It's up here. And the entire Euro series. Yeah, you guys got it right. Ani, Italy won.
Yeah, man, that's a bit of good news for me because when I joined this series on Love of the Game, I made a few predictions which went completely wrong. Be it predicting winners, predicting results, predicting scorelines, scorers, anything I said. Had you put money on the opposite, you would have made a lot by now. So it's gratifying to know that I at least got one thing right. And in the final there were a few things that I actually got right, and I'm quite pleased for myself about it, even though I must say so myself. For example, I did call that England are going to be a little slow to react, are going to be a little smug with whatever's been working for them. So when they did go ahead very early on in the final, they just thought that they can shut shop, keep Italy out for probably 92, 93 minutes of the game because they scored in what 1 minute 35 seconds or whatever. So that didn't work out very well. Southgate was a little slow to make changes to the tactical setup, with little slow with the substitutions, probably thinking that things are going to work. That's precisely how it turned out. Italy equalized. And as the game progressed, Italy got more and more into the game. They were far more in control than England. Penalties, some people say that it's a lottery. Some people say that at the top professional level in big tournaments, it's not a lottery because the players spend a lot of time practicing it, both the keepers as well as the penalty takers. And as we've seen in the recent past, it's not just five guys who need to take penalties. Sometimes it goes into sudden death with 8, 9, 10 shots being required. So the entire team is involved. Having said that, I was very surprised at the choice of penalty takers as well as the order of penalty takers, made by Southgate. There were three inexperienced players who took shots number 3, 4, and 5. Typically, number 5 is your best penalty taker. For example, in the semi-final shootout, Jorginho was the final penalty taker for Italy. He took the final penalty here as well. That's the way it typically goes. But England went with Harry Kane, their best and most experienced penalty taker, right in front, which is also a well-known strategy. But keeping Rashford, Sancho, and Saka as the final three penalty takers was a little surprising. It was not surprising to see Jorginho miss. It was not a surprise to see Belotti miss. If you notice, Pickford in each of those, he kept absolutely still until the last possible moment. So that kind of put the striker off. Similar to what Donnarumma did for Rashford's penalty. Leaving the penalties aside, I think it was a good tactical battle. It was a good final. You never expect finals to be high-scoring, free-flowing games. It could be one-sided, like in the 2012 final where Italy lost 1-4.
Yeah.
But you never see a scoreline like a 4-2 or a 5-3 or anything. So it was, as finals go, a really good spectacle.
It was quite cagey, but Ani, you got the prediction when it mattered the most. And Sujay, I've been riding your name. I've been taking your name to the dogs for the entire series.
Yeah, I'm making note
I
of
owe
all
you an
this.
apology, but I want to pull you up on something. You said
Okay.
Mancini is a stubborn old man who doesn't know when to get out of his own ways with Ciro Immobile. Were you
Yeah.
happy when he took him out?
Uh, See, I would not actually say that I was particularly happy or anything because I think that was a tactic by himself. When as the game progressed, how Mancini, it was not actually about having Ciro Immobile in the front, but the way wherein Italy was trying to replicate other total different style of football. I actually thought that this Mancini's team, like everyone would talk about, it was like his Man City team, a free-flowing kind of a football that they were trying to take the tiki-taka concept of either Spain or the total football of the Netherlands, the Dutch, that are very much known for. It was a total different game that we got to see under Mancini. So that was the thing. The issue was he did not have personnel, especially in the back line.
Hmm.
Till Spinazzola was there, it was working properly. But once Spinazzola was out of the tournament, that is when the worry set in for me. And Immobile, for all his faults, for all his lack of form or anything, okay, in the initial part of the season, sorry, in this tournament, he was, I mean, like he scored in two back-to-back games. But later on, yeah, there were some issues with him. But one thing I think what Hero Immobile did was he kept both the centre backs of England glued to the other half of their,
Yeah.
I mean, like to their D and the central defense line. Taking him out, yes, it was a welcome switch for me at least. But I think it was Barella getting that yellow card, and that is what the way wherein. See, the thing is that England just the way wherein that Southgate the tactics, right? I wasn't surprised after this when they scored in the second minute itself that Southgate is going to park the bus now. I think the excepting for Sterling and Harry Kane, the entire English team was just in front of their own D, in front of their goalkeeper. So it was easy for Italy. Italy actually initially for the first 5-10 minutes, I mean, like they were struggling around. They did not even know what to do. They kept passing around. Somehow they survived the first half. Then after when they came onto the pitch in the second half, they were still calm and composed. They knew right now what to do because they had survived the 45 minutes. I mean, like they had played 45 minutes, 1-0 down. They knew that they have another 45 minutes to actually score one more goal, just to equalize. That's it. So, yeah, I think the proactiveness that something that could have been expected from uh, England was missing, and that actually helped Italy a lot. And like they say, luck favored them a lot, wherein when it mattered the most, wherein it's there are a lot of questionable decisions that Southgate took with regard to the penalties and other thing. But there is, I think it's very unfair that a lot of English fans and a lot of people in the media let me say, I mean, like they're unnecessarily making him a scapegoat because if not for this guy and his belief in his system and his tactics, there wouldn't have been a final Euro final for
No,
England.
absolutely, man. Absolutely. You've hit the nail on the head. Like without Southgate, like the past 8 years that he's had with the team, in the past two tournaments, they've made a drastic change. But there's something interesting both of you have echoed. It was Mancini, for all his stubbornness, was able to adapt with how the game was going. And one of the thing was, I think we spoke about this in the last video, it was the middle of the park. At the beginning, both Rice and Phillips were able to like have a little bit of control, but then once the game progressed, you could see like Jorginho, you could see a Verratti getting into it. But but forget the penalties aside, this game could have been finished in the 90 minutes. This game could have even been finished in extra time, even with both the teams. Uh, Here's my thing, Ani, and then I want Sujay. I have another question for you. Do you think Italy got more confident when it was in extra time because they had already done a round of penalties in the semifinals and they were like kind of prepped? They knew who their takers are. They knew Donnarumma was already had that confidence of saving penalties against Spain. Like, do you think they were playing towards the penalties like when it got to extra time?
Well, so Italy gained control of the game once they made an interesting substitution, which is taking off a classic center forward and making Lorenzo Insigne play as a false nine. So
Okay.
since then, I think they made that helped them to stretch out England's defense. They should have pressed a little more. They should have, tried to score a goal. But I guess they were a little comfortable playing for extra time and penalties. Yes, they had come from 120 minutes plus penalties against Spain. But with the penalty shootout, it's not about how confident you are about saving a penalty or scoring a penalty. It's about the amount of comfort you have with the entire system of playing penalties, right? It's not okay. Yesterday I saved 3 penalties. Today I can save 2 more. Yes, the confidence does matter, but these are two very different teams.
Okay. Sujay, now going with that, do you think Harry Kane disappeared, like being the talismanic striker? Because Ani did mention at the start, like usually you have the best penalty taker at the end. And for me, the only time when watching the game, Harry Kane was there at the end of the game when it came to the penalties. Otherwise, I hadn't seen him at all. Do you think he went missing in these finals?
No, not at all. The thing is, Harry Kane is one kind of a person. If at all you give him service, he will definitely deliver. He did the previous 2 games. I mean, like just okay, not the Denmark game, but the games before that. You need to have someone supply the supply balls to him there. The thing is that right now you are leading in the second minute itself, and you are in a shell of your own, in your own half. You don't even want to even counter attack in the second half of the game. What do you expect Harry Kane to do? You want this person wherein the entire backline of Italy in front of him, he will be the only person who will dribble through some 7-8 players and go and score a goal? No, it's not possible. Harry Kane is not that kind of a player. Harry Kane is that kind of a player. Give him supply. He's a fox in the box. He's a proper fox in the box. So there was no forward play at all. There was no tactics of Southgate wherein Harry Kane could have been involved in the game. I think the only reason he stayed back till 120th minute was to take the penalty, or else he should have been taken out a lot earlier itself. So that was no. There is nothing wrong with Harry Kane, but the thing is that he was actually asked to play as a defensive midfielder or in that position. Actually, he was to play in his own half, just in front of his midfielders. So no, there is. I would not blame Harry Kane. Actually, I would not even blame Gareth Southgate for being conservative because it's a final. Okay, the thing is that none of the English managers actually know what it is to play in a final. The last time England played in a final was in 1966, and this is 2021. 55. There will be a lot of people who will be thrashing him, becoming overnight experts of football, and they will say, okay, you should have gotten Grealish then. Okay, why did you substitute Henderson? See, one thing we should also, the coach
You
knows
made
what
an interesting point, Sujay, and I want your opinion on it, on both your opinions. Like, Ani, you just said that Italy were able to switch when they took out Immobile and had Insigne as like a false nine. Did Southgate go a little too conservative and negative, like waiting till the 90th minute to bring on a Grealish when it was still 1-1, or with the decision of taking Henderson and Walker out because they've taken penalties for both their club, they've taken penalties for their clubs. So was there anything in the tactical thing, especially with the substitute? Because like we said, he's a super sub, super Jackie Grealish. So do you think they waited too long for these decisions?
Absolutely, Paul. That's precisely what I mentioned a few minutes ago as well. Southgate was a little overconfident in England's ability to see out the game. That's my belief. When Sujay mentioned that Harry Kane was given a lot of work to do, come deep to collect the ball and try to take on the defense entirely on his own. That never really works. When you're playing defensive, it doesn't mean that you constantly have 9 men behind the ball and have one lone guy, trying his luck up front, especially in a final. At some point of time, Italy had to go for it. Italy would have gotten more desperate had this gone towards the 80th minute or so. And in such cases, having a lone guy up front is never helpful. There was a huge gap between what was the midfield and what were the forwards. There was Harry Kane and Raheem Sterling. And they were pretty much isolated. I don't think Chiellini and Bonucci would have complained at all. I think they had a pretty easy day at the office with just these two guys getting isolated up front. Had there been a greater link between the defense, midfield, and attack, I think England would have been far more threatening, or at least they could have controlled the game a lot better, because Italy aren't going to throw the kitchen sink. They know that one more goal is going to kill it off.
Yeah.
And therefore, the knowledge that there are two guys who are completely isolated and they don't really need to worry about it would give them so much more confidence to go forward. And this is something that Southgate underestimated. He thought, Italy aren't going to come forward in that manner. He had too much faith in, what had worked for him. In fair play to him, like Sujay mentioned, there hasn't been an England manager in this generation or even the previous generation who's taken the team up to the final. They've got up to semi-finals and they've lost in various kinds of circumstances, in by way of penalty shootouts, by way of getting outplayed or whatever. But this was the first time they were in a final in about 2 or 3 generations.
Yeah.
So Southgate did what he could. Mancini is a manager who's taken top teams to league titles. He's taken teams deep into European club competitions. So he has a slightly better know-how, slightly more experience in handling this situation. For all the talk about his stubbornness, for all the talk about his panic under pressure, I think he's learned over the years. He's learned even during the course of this tournament, and all credit to him for making those changes. But after probably the 80th minute or so, you could see that the Italian team also slowed down. They were playing for extra time, and during extra time, they were playing for penalties. So it's not as if they are bereft of blame. They could have gone, made use of the control, made use of the possession, and tried to score themselves, but there was something holding them back. It's a final. The people play the occasion more often than the opponents, and that's what happened during the latter part of the game.
No, it was a culmination and of the entire 18 months of no football, and this was just the festival of bringing everyone together, the crowds, the fans all over the world, the sleepless nights that all of us have had while watching these games and trying to go to work the next day, and making sure that you have enough energy to even speak properly, because it's taken a lot of all of us. And on that final note, I wanted to, when we with wrapping this up, Sujay, I have a thing for both of you guys. What do we look forward to with these teams? Like, what's next?
No, I just wanted to make one point, okay, before we wrap it up. See, I will say one thing. Even, yeah, Italy have won it, okay. Italy, in the end, somehow they won it in the penalty shootout. Yeah. But I will still say in the penalty shootout, it was actually Pickford who was a better keeper than Donnarumma. Okay. And one thing I will say, Federico Chiesa, he was the only person in the entire Italian team who was a bit effective going forward. He was the only guy who was actually like vertically going properly forward and attacking England. None of the other Italians were actually doing that. Okay. Even Insigne had a very off game yesterday. I mean, they were just happy continuing. I mean, they
No,
just
absolutely, Sujay. And that's why we've got a video talking about what our thoughts about Chiesa and where we see him going along. So make sure you click on the video. The link for the video is up here. But guys, where do we see these teams going forward? Because both Bonucci and Chiellini aren't getting any younger. They are progressing in age. Will they be there? What's next for these two teams?
I think compared between both of them, I'm fairly sure that the World Cup that is 18 months away from now, England will be much better in a much better situation, because it's a complete group of youngsters right now, mixture of 18, 19 year olds, 20, 21 and all, with the proper experienced campaigners in Jordan Henderson, Harry Kane, Harry Maguire, Luke Shaw. We can also include him as one of the senior players, even in John Stones. But like you mentioned there, Italy, it's losing its spine. Italy is losing its entire identity. Okay, with Bonucci and Chiellini gone right now, and with Mancini and his, it's a total toss up. I mean, like Italy will be a total surprise package, even from the way of the playing, to what they'll be doing. And I will not be surprised if they crash out of the group stages itself, like it has happened with Italy in the past. But won't be surprised. But I definitely think that England will be in a much better situation. It's Gareth Southgate will definitely learn from this experience from this final. And yeah, mark my words. Right now, England is once again. I mean, like the public is back to its usual. They just, I think, they
The
love
wheels are
bashing their
turning.
team
The
becoming
wheels are in
experts.
motion in England. Ani, what are your thoughts? Who do you think? What's next for both of these teams that made it to the finals and Italy winning?
I agree with Sujay to an extent here. They are losing the spine of their defense, or even if Bonucci and Chiellini haven't really announced retirements, I'm quite sure that they might not be around come November 2022, because they're 35 and 34 respectively. They've played a lot, and they're considerably slower right now. So it remains to be seen as to how Italy evolve from here. England's team is largely coming into its peak. There are a few young players like Sancho, Rashford, the Jack Grealish. All of these guys are young. They have quite a few years ahead of them. There are still World Cup qualification games. There are still friendlies which are going to happen in the next 16 to 18 months. And there's going to be plenty of opportunity for this team to get even better. Southgate hopefully learns and understands that being conservative, being defensive, being hyper organized
Yeah.
is not always a good thing. It is good sometimes, but you need to have an attacking plan because there's so much talent available there. Hopefully, he finds a way of utilizing it. There are a few points to note about the next World Cup, though. First thing is that it's happening mid-season. Typically, you'd have a World Cup tournament happening in June and July after most of the European leagues have finished with their seasons. So, the players are going to be a lot fresher. They haven't had an entire season of football behind them. The second thing is it's happening in a desert country, that is Qatar. And even though there may be air conditioning, there may be cooled pitches, all the high tech that's been promised, it's still a hot and dry place. And most European teams are going to find it a little difficult to adjust. I would say that the South American teams who are used to playing in slightly more hot and humid conditions, Brazil, for example, would be at a greater advantage. The Euros are, as the name suggests, is European teams.
Yeah.
The World Cup has teams from everywhere else. There are good African teams. There are really, really good South American teams. Probably because of the familiarity of the conditions, we can expect a couple of Asian teams to spring a surprise. So I wouldn't just be looking at England and Italy for the next World Cup. I wouldn't go so far as to hazard a guess right now to say either of these teams are going to crash out of the group stage.
Hmm.
It is a possibility, but as the tournament gets closer, we should probably have one of these videos on love of the game and talk about things that we spoke today.
No, definitely, definitely. Thanks, guys, for being there throughout this entire series. And it's going to be interesting to see what happens with these teams going forward. The next few months is going to be interesting with everything that's happening. And to the organizers of the Qatar World Cup, we at the Love of the Game would love to be there in person in Qatar covering the games. So this goes out to you, and I am going to personally post on your Twitter on everything that you have. Get us there. We want to be there. Give us a chance. You've seen what we've done. Make sure you click and subscribe and see everything that we're doing. We want to be in Qatar 2022. We're from India, so the desert climate doesn't bother us. Just give us some small hand fan. We will be there. Thanks, guys, for watching Love of the Game, and we'll be right back. See you guys soon.